Sterilised by force. Natalie got a shock when she answered the door to find two social workers standing before her. She was cradling her 4-month-old baby April in her arms. "We don't think you're coping with her," one of the officials said. "We want to place her in care." Natalie was crushed, but she desperately wanted to keep her daughter, so she agreed to undergo the assessments they requested. The tests revealed that she had an IQ of 70. She was also classed as having a mild to borderline learning disability. "We need to take April away," a social worker told her. The news sent Natalie into a spin. She split up with her boyfriend and later met a new partner, Paul. In the meantime, social services continued checking up on her. One day, a social worker noticed her stomach was swollen. "Are you pregnant again?" she asked Natalie gently. Natalie firmly denied it and spent the next 5 months refusing to see authorities. However, she developed a urinary tract infection and ended up in hospital. There, a scan revealed a baby that was almost full term and in the breech position. "You'll need a cesarean," a doctor told her. The doctor wanted to perform it as soon as possible, but Natalie had the legal right to wait until the baby's due date, so she did. She was thrilled when she gave birth to another girl, Billy, but she was taken by social services right away. Desperate to raise their children, Natalie and Paul started undergoing more assessments. But they showed Paul had an IQ of 62 and a significant learning disability. Social services deemed Natalie and Paul as incapable of being responsible parents, and Billy was adopted. Then a year later, a social worker again saw signs of a swollen belly during a routine appointment with Natalie. Once again, Natalie fiercely denied she was pregnant. Then 4 months later, a social worker found her with a baby boy in her arms. An assessment showed the baby was 5 to 10 days old, seriously dehydrated and undernourished. He also had lesions on his head. "Have you been breastfeeding him?" the midwife asked. She was horrified when Natalie told her that they had tried to feed him a cup of soup. It also appeared Paul had tried to help deliver the baby with a pair of barbecue tongs. The baby was treated in hospital before being put up for adoption. Natalie and Paul were formally cautioned by police for child neglect. Natalie's doctor tried to encourage her to start using contraception, but she refused. "I don't like putting things in me," she said. Another year passed and Natalie arrived at the hospital in an ambulance. She was fitting and was unconscious. It soon became apparent that she was pregnant again and her baby was in distress. She was rushed off for an emergency cesarean section. Her baby boy was born at 29 weeks and taken straight to a special care unit. Natalie was treated for a hemorrhage, but later was adamant the bleed hadn't even happened. "It's not possible," she said. "I know my body 100%. She refused further treatment and once again the baby was put up for adoption. By now, social workers were so concerned they visited her home every week, but she never opened the door. Eventually, they had no choice but to obtain a court order to enter by force. They found Natalie trying to breastfeed a baby girl. She was wrapped in a dirty, blood-stained pillowcase and the house was filthy. They searched their home and found no signs of nappies or baby clothes. She soon handed the baby girl over. After that, social workers were constantly at the house. They visited 25 times in 1 month. But Natalie and Paul wouldn't let them in. "Not pregnant," Paul would shout from behind the locked door. Social workers were at their wits' end and got another court order to enter the house. They found Natalie heavily pregnant. A doctor confirmed she was almost full term and warned her that her 6 pregnancies had taken a toll on her body. She was told she needed a cesarean section but refused. "My baby won't be born in a hospital," she said. Social workers tried their best to change her mind, pointing out that her learning difficulties meant she wasn't making healthy decisions. "I do not have a disability. I have passed every test and will win," Natalie cried. "I want to have the baby naturally." The authorities were now deeply concerned about Natalie and her baby. They knew if she was left alone she would have the baby in unhygienic circumstances. They had no choice but to get a court order that would enable them to drug and restrain Natalie so she could have a cesarean. As soon as her newborn son was taken into care, Natalie became seriously ill. A doctor discovered her uterus was paper thin. "If you have another child, there's a 50% chance your uterus will rupture and the baby won't survive," he told her. She was then given a choice between contraception or sterilization. "I don't want to be sterilized," Natalie cried. "That would make me empty and unhappy." Paul agreed to use contraception but refused to even consider a vasectomy. "Paul is sterile," Natalie argued. "I took a tablet from a health food shop and that got me pregnant." When asked if she wanted more children, she said she wanted to replace her first child, April. "I want to prove I'm a fit parent," she said. Social services asked the Court of Protection if they could force Natalie to be sterilised. After considering all the evidence, the judge, Justice Cobb, concluded sterilisation was in Natalie's best interests. "A future pregnancy, especially if concealed, is highly likely to lead to her death," he said. He described the case as extraordinary, tragic, and complex. He also agreed necessary restraint could be used, and if needed, Natalie could be forcibly removed from her home to undergo sterilisation. However, he did add that those who lack capacity have the same rights as everyone else. It's a tricky situation. On one hand, no one wants to see a distraught mum sterilised by force, but could authorities stand by and let Natalie put her life in danger for a child that would be taken away? What do you think? Was it fair for the court to force Natalie to be sterilised, or was it a breach of her rights as a woman? I'd like to know your thoughts. Post your comments below, and thanks for listening.
Like the 5-minute story you just listened to? Check out our channel for more 5-minute movies and click the subscribe button below to be notified once we publish another story. If you'd like to submit a 5-minute story to us, please send us a message through YouTube. If you'd like to stay anonymous, we can change your name for the story, but remember, your story does have to be true. Take care and keep listening.